Have you ever had someone just straight up steal your family's place and hand it over to their own kid like it was a freebie at a yard sale? Because that's exactly what happened to me. You want to talk about the kind of boldness that feels illegal just to witness? Picture this. I built a massive wooden fence. Yeah, that's right, a fence right through the front yard of the lady who stole my grandfather's lake cabin and handed it to her precious son like it was nothing. You know what I mean? You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried. Let me back up a sec. My grandfather's cabin had been in our family for 30 years, sitting right on the water with its own dock oak trees bending over the roof and the kind of morning light that could make even the worst days feel like hope. When I inherited it, it became more than a getaway. It was my sanctuary, a place I could go to work on custom woodwork in the same little shed my grandfather built with his own two hands. Every inch of that place held a memory, a lesson, a fingerprint of the man who taught me patience craft and what it meant to build something that lasts. The trouble started the day Margaret, the new HOA president, marched onto my dock. Margaret was 60, going on dictator clipboard in hand, hair set so tight it looked like it might crack. She was the kind of woman who found her life's purpose in enforcing rules. Nobody else even remembered the Queen of Compliance, and apparently unknown to all of us, a master con artist in waiting. She'd stand there in my workshop or on my dock, making snide comments about how young families need lake access and how my son Jake really loves the lake. Like, was I supposed to take the hint and just hand over my property? At first, I laughed it off. I mean, come on. Who threatens someone over hand tools or says a dock that predates the HOA needs retroactive approval? But Margaret wasn't bluffing. She'd show up again and again with new made-up violations. My siding wasn't the right color. My workshop noise was disturbing. My dock was under review. And every time she'd bring up her son Jake like he was royalty waiting for his castle. Now, Jake, let me just say, if entitlement were an Olympic sport, that kid would have his own Wheaties box. He started showing up too, wandering the property, taking pictures, measuring things, acting like he was planning a remodel. He literally told me, "This place is going to make a great family retreat someday." I mean, who says that? Not even subtle. Things escalated fast. Margaret started asking about deeds, property lines, survey markers, stuff most folks wouldn't even think to ask unless they were hunting for a loophole. And then she dropped this cryptic line, "Documentation has a way of evolving over time." Yeah, that happened. I felt it in my gut. She was looking for a way, in a weakness, anything to pry the place out of my hands. It wasn't long before she served me with some official-sounding HOA letter. My dock was under review. Cease all activity immediately. Suddenly, my weekends turned into lawyer appointments and panicked phone calls to neighbors who, it turned out, had all been bullied by Margaret in one way or another. She'd been running the same power trip on the whole street, except now it was personal. Jake's visits got weirder. He'd bring a measuring tape, a notebook, even sketch out my dock like he was auditioning for a spot on HGTV. And always with that smirk as if he already owned the place. Meanwhile, Margaret ramped up the paperwork, challenging my taxes, questioning the property lines, everything designed to wear me down or catch me slipping. I barely slept. I thought about selling, just walking away, but every time I did, I'd picture my grandfather's hands showing me how to feel the wood grain, telling me, "Build it right the first time, Clay." That memory kept me anchored. Then the big move came. Margaret ordered a full property boundary survey, claimed there was a historical error, and tried to convince the county and everyone else that my family's cabin had always technically belonged to the HOA common area. She brought an official-looking surveyor and dumped a mountain of paperwork on my kitchen table, all claiming the land was never ours to begin with. I thought it was a bad joke until my lawyer took one look at the docs and spotted the fraud. Turns out Margaret had faked historical documents, manipulated the property lines using her old real estate connections, and pushed through a boundary correction that just happened to transfer my grandfather's cabin right into HOA hands. All so she could lease it, get this, to her son for $90 a month. On paper, it looked legal. In reality, it was a con job worthy of a Netflix docuseries. The day I got locked out of my own family's cabin, I saw Jake moving in with nothing but a duffel bag, acting like he'd won the lottery. He started living my life, drinking coffee out of a mug I'd made with my grandfather's initials burned into the handle, posting pictures online, bragging about his new lake house. The humiliation, the anger, it nearly broke me. Then came the party. Jake and his friends threw a full-blown housewarming in my workshop beer coolers on my grandfather's bench, music blaring over the water. I stood in the dark just out of sight, watching strangers trample all over what used to be our family's peace. That's when it hit me. I wasn't going to fight this in court, at least not alone. I was going to fight back the way my grandfather would have wanted, with skill, precision, and a little bit of poetic justice. I hired my own surveyor, someone Margaret hadn't bought off, and had him map every inch of her property. The results. Turns out Margaret's own house was sitting 15 feet over the line onto HOA land. Her beloved garden mailbox, even her front walkway, technically not hers at all. That's when I got the idea for the fence. Building that fence was like therapy. Each post was a nail in the coffin of Margaret's scheme, running right through her prized yard. Neighbors watched from their windows, whispering, and for the first time nobody came to Margaret's defense. She ran out in her bathrobe screaming about property rights, but all I had to do was point to her own survey documents. Not my yard, Margaret. Just exercising my rights as a community member, I told her. Word spread. Folks started asking about their own boundaries. Turns out Margaret had been manipulating records for years, screwing over half the neighborhood to pad her own property value. Once people realized what she'd been up to, it was like watching a dam break. The HOA rebelled, demanded her removal, called for a county investigation, and before long the authorities uncovered years of fraud, abuse of power, even tax evasion. The final tally. Multiple counts of fraud for Margaret, theft charges for both her and Jake, and a community that finally woke up. The best part, I got my cabin back, every tool and mug in place, and the county paid my legal bills. Margaret was ordered to pay restitution, banned from the HOA for life, and forced to sell her own house. That fence, my fence, became the neighborhood landmark, a living reminder that sometimes you gotta fight fire with fire, lies with truth, and fences with better fences. Jake ended up bagging groceries at the local store to help pay his mother's debts, a daily reminder that you don't get to steal a legacy and walk away clean. The new HOA board made transparency a priority. They put up a community bulletin right by my fence with every property map in plain view, so nobody could ever run the same scam again. That elderly couple down the street rebuilt their gazebo, folks started fixing up their places, and neighbors brought their kids by to see the fence. This is what happens when you stand up for what's right, they'd say. Every morning I sit on my dock, drink coffee from that old mug, and look at the fence, justice carved in cedar, stubborn as family, as permanent as legacy. Some boundaries aren't meant to be moved, not with lies, not with fraud, not with 1,000 pages of fake paperwork. In the end, Margaret tried to rewrite history, but she handed me the best ending anyone could ask for: a community awake, a legacy defended, and a fence that stands as proof. What would you have done if it were you? Where do you draw the line when someone tries to take what's yours? Let me know down below, like, comment, or share your own story. And hey, if you stuck with me this far, you already know some fences are worth building.